there's a numbness I imagine some of us are feeling about this, because there's a sameness to this. You know, anywhere USA. It just feels like this happens over and over and over again. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
An all too familiar scene in an all too familiar setting. Another mass shooting in America at another workplace. Shell-shocked employees coming to terms with the fact that their workplace will never be the same. Tonight, at least 8 people are dead. The shooting at San Jose, California's rail yard. Authorities also finding explosives inside. Police identifying the shooter found dead at the scene, his home set on fire. What we're learning tonight about the motive and the victims. Where did coronavirus start? Tonight, President Biden is ordering the intelligence community to take a close look at theories it may have originated in a China lab. And tonight, a new study casting light on just how long the vaccines might last. And tonight, the criminal investigation of former President Trump moves forward. What happens if Trump is charged, and when might it take place? We talk with a former deputy of the man who could bring those charges.
Trump is going to say what he's going to say, and that I expect would happen even if Trump himself is not charged. You know, whoever is charged in this case will face a public relations onslaught.
And after that pipeline hack snarled oil in the U.S. for days, the concern tonight about more ransomware attacks and what businesses can do to protect themselves. And this Asian American Heritage Month, our conversation with a children's book author with an important message tonight.
The children and the folks who are migrating and who are refugees are people just like you and me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Enough. A piercing reprimand from President Biden today, and Governor Gavin Newsom saying there is a sameness to this, a repeat event that he says could take place in anywhere USA. On this day, it was a workplace in San Jose, California, but the grim reality tonight is once again, Americans all across the country are realizing no community is immune from mass shootings. No workplace has a safety guarantee. It was supposed to be a day of celebration at the VTA rail yard. Today was the first day of expanded rail service since the pandemic began, a sign that life was moving back to normal. Then all of that changed when authorities say a VTA employee opened fire on his own, killing at least 8 before he's suspected of then taking his own life. Workers are now realizing this rail yard is forever changed. Tonight, we're learning the suspected gunman apparently also set fire to his home. Neighbors were forced to evacuate as investigators search for explosives and other weapons. Our Kaylee Hartung leads us off with more on the investigation into what happened.
Tonight, federal and local law enforcement are combing yet another mass shooting crime scene for evidence after a deadly rampage at this rail yard in San Jose.
This is where everything unfolded this morning. Multiple people shot and killed.
The calls for help from the Valley Transportation Authority light rail maintenance yard started coming in just after 6:30 a.m. local time.
We have 3 Code 3 ambulances. This is an active shooter.
Happening just as train service for the morning commute was getting underway, preparing for increasing ridership as the pandemic subsides. And just as some 80 employees were reportedly holding a union meeting. Multiple law enforcement agencies swarming the rail yard, which is just down the street from the sheriff's office and other county government buildings. Tactical teams racing in to reach victims. Desperate family members rushing to the area searching for any information about loved ones.
I'm just here looking for my brother. He's an employee.
Okay, have you heard from him?
No.
Michael Hawkins saying he got a message from his wife, Rochelle, a mechanic. She said she dropped her phone from running, but was all right.
I'm just here for my wife and hoping she's okay and whoever else in there okay.
Explosive teams clearing the facility inch by inch.
We received information that there are explosive devices that are located inside the building.
8 employees killed, 1 person critically injured. The suspect, whose sources briefed on the investigation tell ABC News, is 57-year-old Samuel Cassidy, taking his own life. Bomb squads moving in on his home. Authorities say he set fire to it just before driving to the rail yard.
So a horrible tragedy has happened today, and our thoughts and love goes out to the VTA family, the organization, and what they've had to go through.
Here we are in the United States of America. We're experiencing something just is not experienced anywhere else in the world. There's a sameness to this. And that numbness, I think, is something we're all feeling. What the hell's going on in the United States of America? What the hell's wrong with us? And when are we going to come to grips with this? When are we going to put down our arms, literally and figuratively?
Governor Newsom there expressing his frustration with the frequency and regularity of these shootings. Kaylee Hartung joins us now from San Jose, near where the shooting took place. Kaylee, is it still an active crime scene there?
Yeah, Lindsay, we're just on the perimeter of the crime scene here, and the bomb squad, they are still on site. They say they are searching every crevice of this facility. And officials warn this investigation will take considerable time because this rail yard maintenance facility, it's just so large. And we've heard officials praise the quick response of officers here. Let me show you why that was possible. See that building in the distance? That's the sheriff's department, just about 100 yards and across the street from the rail yard. The police department, it's just a block in front of me. If not for this geography and that quick response, officials here say this situation could have been much worse. Lindsay.
Yeah, we can imagine that. All right, Kaylee Hartung on the scene there in San Jose. Thank you so much. And joining us now is the mayor of San Jose, Sam Liccardo. Mayor, first off, our condolences to you and your community. As we just mentioned, the gunman was a former employee at the VTA. What's the latest information that you have about a possible motive?
Well, thank you, Lindsay. I don't want to speculate about motive, getting in front of the investigators who are doing the hard work, but it's clear that the gunman was a VTA employee, and I talked to several employees who were there at the scene, and there were concerns about this gunman. There's no question. So I don't want to speculate about motive, but clearly this is a horrific event, and we've got a lot of families and a lot of friends in pain right now.
Right, you mentioned those families. Have you gotten a chance to talk to any of the families of any of the victims?
Yes, I spent quite a bit of time with several families who had not even heard the news yet. They were simply waiting. And there's been a lot of waiting because of difficulties in tying down the crime scene, being able to get in there while there were concerns about potential explosives. So that slowed everything down and made it much more difficult to provide the notifications that the families deserve.
You've called this every mayor's worst nightmare, and earlier today you made it clear that these shootings cannot be viewed as isolated incidents anymore. After the mass shooting at the Gilroy Garlic Festival in 2019, you presented a proposal that would require gun owners in your city to carry liability insurance. Where do things stand with that?
Yeah, we've actually been working over the last year to try to put the pieces in place, both on liability insurance as well as a fee that would ensure that the public would stop paying for the cost of gun violence, as we see is incurred in emergency rooms every day in cities throughout this country. We have had to work very steadily and carefully because of restrictions in state and federal law to ensure that we have the data that will support those fees and insurance mandates. I expect that I will get that in front of the council here in San Jose within the next 2 months. We're pushing forward collaboratively with foundations and expert consultants.
Any other legislation that you might be considering? I know that this is so new and fresh, but I'm wondering if there was already something kind of in the back of mind on a table somewhere that you had been thinking about.
Well, there are other things we've been working on. For example, we're about to enact an ordinance that will mandate at gun shops videotape recording of every gun purchase to try to deter straw purchasing, that is, purchasing from folks who should not legally own guns. I don't pretend that any of those measures are going to stop a deranged individual from going into a workplace and opening fire. The reality is we live in a country with 300 million guns, about as many guns as people. And until we can fundamentally get our arms around that huge risk, all these measures are half measures. I'm going to continue to push, like so many of my sister and brother mayors throughout the country. But until we have serious action at the federal level, none of this is going to make a significant difference.
It's my understanding that you've got a call from the vice president today. Can you share anything from that conversation with us?
Yeah, I was very grateful to receive a call from Vice President Harris, who, of course, grew up here in the Bay Area and was sending strong words of encouragement and strength. And we are so grateful that she's been a strong champion for us. As I know the president announced he'd be flying flags at half-mast. You know, I'm heartened to hear the strong words of support from throughout the country, and I'm hopeful that with other mayors and Congress, we'll be able to move forward on some substantive action to curtail the scourge of gun violence.
Mayor Liccardo, we certainly appreciate you talking with us on what we know is just a heart-wrenching day. We'll certainly be keeping your community in our thoughts.
Thank you.
And let's bring in our congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott. Rachel, even in the wake of multiple mass shootings in recent months, it seems that there's been little talk of concrete action on gun control. Is this just not a priority on Capitol Hill right now?
You know, Lindsay, it is just a stalemate on Capitol Hill. Listen, we have heard from President Joe Biden today. He has said that enough is enough. He says that it's time for Congress to pass meaningful gun reform. The House has already passed several bills, including 2 just this past year on background checks, but it is stalled in the Senate, where Democrats need the support of at least 10 Republicans, and it just is not there. There are some bipartisan negotiations happening behind the scenes where some Democrats and Republicans are trying to get on the same page, but this is an issue that has been stalled in Congress for decades now, and this is where you see some of the challenges for President Joe Biden. He signed some of these executive orders on gun reform, but it really just shows how limited he is from the Oval Office. Any meaningful reform is going to take Congress to act, and it's not just on gun reform. As you know, they have set deadline after deadline. President Biden encouraging Congress to pass police reform by Memorial Day. He wanted to see progress on bipartisan negotiations when it comes to infrastructure, and still we have yet to see very little progress here on Capitol Hill when it comes to actually getting a lot of these bills across the finish line, Lindsay.
And meanwhile, Senate Republicans are set to reveal their counterproposal to the White House on an infrastructure bill tomorrow morning. What do we know about their proposal, and what's the White House saying?
Yeah, they're going to unveil this first thing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Listen, I was just talking to Senator Chris Coons, a close ally to President Joe Biden, and he has always said that there was room for bipartisan negotiations up to Memorial Day. The White House has made it clear as well that they wanted to see substantial progress on this by Memorial Day when it comes to bipartisan negotiations. Even the president warning that they're not going to wait forever when it comes to this. So you had the White House. They came down a little bit on their offer, but they're still about $1 trillion apart, and there's still differences here on what exactly is infrastructure. Democrats have a different idea of it than Republicans do. Republicans really want to focus on just the hard infrastructure, the traditional infrastructure when it comes to roads, bridges, even broadband internet. And then, of course, our eyes are all on one man, Senator Joe Manchin, a key moderate senator here in Congress, who really has pushed back against the idea of Democrats going at this alone and using reconciliation. So the bottom line here is that we can expect this package unveiled by Republicans, including Senator Shelley Moore Capito, to be under $1 trillion or so. We know that there are still some key disagreements here about just how to pay for this. Republicans do not want to raise taxes at all, something that President Biden is pretty firm on. And we could also expect to see some of those key differences about eliminating a lot of the human infrastructure completely out of this bill and just focusing on the core infrastructure. That is actually an area where Democrats and Republicans do agree on, but it's going to be a matter of time just to see how the White House and the president reacts. The president, like I said, has made it clear that he's not going to wait forever on this one, saying that Democrats could try to go at this alone if Republicans cannot get on board, Lindsay.
And as you say, all eyes on Senator Joe Manchin. Rachel Scott, our thanks to you.
Thanks.
Now to the hunt for the origins of the coronavirus. President Biden has directed the U.S. intelligence community to redouble their efforts to find out if the virus jumped from animals to humans or escaped from China's Wuhan lab. So what's behind the new push? Here's ABC senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce.
Tonight, President Biden ordering U.S. intelligence agencies to redouble their efforts to investigate the origins of COVID-19, saying that as of today, they've coalesced around 2 likely scenarios. One, the virus was transmitted through contact with an infected animal. The other, it escaped from a lab in Wuhan, China. The president giving intelligence agencies 90 days to report back. The announcement came hours after Dr. Anthony Fauci faced tough questions on Capitol Hill.
So have we found any animals that carry COVID-19 that could have been the source of the transmission to humans thus far?
Thus far, not.
At what point in time would it become more likely it came from the lab if we don't find an intermediate animal host? How much longer?
I don't think we can give a time element on that, Senator, for the simple reason we still have not yet confirmed what the host is from Ebola. We know that Ebola jumps from an animal reservoir to human, and it's been many years now since the original Ebola outbreaks, and we haven't yet nailed it.
But Fauci saying he supports an investigation into the origins of COVID.
As I've said, I still believe that the most likely scenario is that this was a natural occurrence, but no one knows that 100% for sure. And since no one absolutely knows that, I believe we do need the kind of investigation where there's open transparency.
In March, the World Health Organization determined it was unlikely the virus emerged from a lab. But earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal reported that 3 Chinese workers in that Wuhan lab were hospitalized with flu-like symptoms in November of 2019, 1 month before China reported its first case of COVID. Just 24 hours ago, the White House said the World Health Organization should lead any further investigation. Today, reporters asking what changed.
What has changed is he wants to give another 90 days to dig a little deeper, to double down, to double down their efforts, and that is what he's asking for.
Mary Bruce reporting in from the White House. Mary, certainly a different tone from the White House today, and they've been getting some pressure on this issue.
Well, Lindsay, we have seen a lot of growing questions about whether that Chinese lab was somehow involved in the origin of the coronavirus. Now, pressed today about the timing of this announcement, the White House insisted it has nothing to do with reports of those Chinese lab workers being hospitalized in November of 2019. What is clear, though, is that the Biden administration is now giving this lab theory a serious second look. They have now given U.S. intelligence agencies just 90 days to report back, try and get some answers to these questions. But, Lindsay, it's not clear what additional information they're going to be able to uncover in such a short amount of time.
Mary Bruce, our thanks to you. Now to the latest progress on tackling the coronavirus here in the U.S. as millions of Americans are expected to travel this holiday weekend. Some vaccine programs will try to reach people in transit, including at airports. And there's a renewed focus on vaccinating young people, including some states offering incentives like giveaways for free college tuition to a lucky few. Today, more than 164 million Americans have had at least one dose, about 59% of everyone 12 years and older. ABC's Whit Johnson has the very latest.
Tonight, Americans on the move. 37 million expected to travel this Memorial Day weekend, up 60% over last year. The TSA planning to screen about 6 million air travelers, the most since the start of the pandemic. Some New York airports now offering vaccines on site.
We're trying to get as many people as we possibly can to get injections and make it as convenient as possible.
Half the U.S. adult population now fully vaccinated, but health experts insist it's no time to let up.
If you are vaccinated, you are protected, and you can enjoy your Memorial Day. If you are not vaccinated, our guidance has not changed for you. You remain at risk of infection. You still need to mask and take other precautions.
States going all out with huge incentives. Tonight, Ohio just hours away from announcing the first winners of its Vax-A-Million jackpot and college scholarship. And now New York giving away 50 free rides to state colleges, room and board included.
For a parent, you're worried about paying college tuition? Tell your 12 to 17-year-old, go out, get a shot.
With questions about how long protection against COVID could last, 2 encouraging new studies suggest people who recovered from the virus had some immunity long after antibodies faded, even a year later. Researchers found cells in the bone marrow still remembered the COVID infection. Experts now suggest the vaccine might give a supercharged immunity to people who had the virus. It's still unclear when Americans will need a booster. Dr. Anthony Fauci today asked about booster shots on Capitol Hill.
I don't anticipate that the durability of the vaccine protection is going to be infinite. It's just not.
Right.
So I would imagine we will need at some time a booster. I believe we will need a booster. I'm not exactly sure when.
Whit Johnson joins us now. Whit, there is new research tonight suggesting that people who recovered from the virus and were later vaccinated may actually have stronger immunity against the virus.
Lindsay, these studies show that if you've been infected, you have protection up to a year later. But experts also tell us for those people who've already had the virus, when they get the vaccine, it almost acts like a booster shot, turbocharging those antibodies so they can last much longer. Lindsay?
Whit Johnson, our thanks to you. And more news out of California tonight, a possible development in that string of highway shootings, a suspect taken into custody but not charged in connection with one of them. The development comes a month after the community was forced to remain on high alert. ABC's Will Carr has the details.
Tonight, a suspect under arrest for allegedly firing a BB gun on a Los Angeles freeway. Investigators now trying to determine if he's responsible for a spree of shootings on Southern California highways. Car windows shattered, motorists terrorized. Authorities believe by either BB or pellet guns. Ashley Bravo's window was hit.
We were driving on the freeway and then we just heard like a big pop. I've been scared. I told him like, don't get on the freeway. This is what happened.
Our Los Angeles station KABC reporting at least 3 more vehicles shot at this week and at least 100 incidents since late April, almost all along the 91 freeway. Dr. Don Pettinger was heading to work this week when the windows of his car were shot out.
All of a sudden I heard a large explosion, like a bang in the rear behind me. Then I started hearing glass shattering and falling.
The suspect in custody has not been charged yet. Thankfully, no motorists have been injured in the incidents.
Our thanks to Will for that. And now we shift to the severe weather as more than 50 million people from the Midwest to the Northeast brace for storms. Rob Marciano joins us now. Rob, what can you tell us about these storms?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's not often we get 2 areas that are this potent a severe weather threat, one of which includes the Northeast. And here we've already seen over 80 damaging wind reports, including 3 people getting injured. The radar is showing you where these lines of storms are, and New York City is about to get hit, Hartford, Boston, you're in it too, and these watch boxes are up until 10, 11 o'clock in some spots. This all moves away after midnight. Tomorrow will be a much more calm day. But the Midwest, boy, these storms are really starting to crank up. A PDS tornado watch, a particularly dangerous situation. They don't issue these very often, but that's when the atmosphere is really primed to develop some thunderstorms that will likely develop not just tornadoes, but large, long-track, damaging tornadoes. And you see some of those cells beginning to pop there. And those tornado watches, some of which are up until after 1 a.m., so well into the nighttime hours. It's a pretty rural area tonight, so it would just really be unlucky if a town or a neighborhood or a residence got hit. Tomorrow, though, it pushes off towards the east, and you see the line getting through St. Louis, so the threat spreads into more populated areas, Wichita Falls, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Springfield, and yes, into St. Louis. Damaging winds, scattered hail, and a few tornadoes possible as well. That's the latest on what's happening weather-wise. Lindsay, this does weaken a little bit on day 3, but the next 36 hours are certainly going to be dicey. Lindsay?
Rob Marciano, thanks so much. And when we come back, the stunning testimony, the man accused of killing Molly Tibbetts, her story made national headlines not too long ago. He's now changing his tune and claims he was the victim of a brazen crime. On the heels of that pipeline hack that caused fuel shortages, we take a closer look at the growing problem of ransomware and what can be done to stop it. But up next, with a special grand jury now looking into the former president, his family, and the Trump Organization, we break down what that all may entail and what the timeline might be. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a 3rd hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the 2nd straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
And now to the criminal investigation of former President Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. Sources tell ABC News that Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance has now convened a special grand jury that could decide whether or not to indict the former president, a step that likely signals an escalation of a nearly 2-year probe. Prosecutors are looking at whether Trump may have inflated the value of some properties while obtaining bank loans, but then deflated those values for tax purposes. In a statement last night, Trump called the seating of the grand jury, quote, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in American history, and that it's, quote, being driven by highly partisan Democrat prosecutors. To help us unpack what all of this means, we bring in attorney Dan Alonzo, the former deputy to Manhattan DA Cy Vance, the prosecutors leading this investigation. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Alonzo.
Thanks for having me.
So it's been reported that this special grand jury could meet 3 times a week for up to 6 months, and that during this time, the jurors could consider this and unrelated investigations. What does it mean to you that the DA, your former boss, took this step?
It means that they've reached the point in a long-term, complex investigation where they need the special grand jury, meaning they need something that's extended for longer than 4 weeks, which is the normal term of a regular grand jury. We colloquially call these specials. They're really just additional grand juries whose term gets extended long beyond the 4 weeks. And why would they need this extended grand jury? Essentially for 2 reasons. One is that they highly likely have decided that they do want to present charges against someone, at least one person or a company. More likely they have multiple targets that they're looking at and people that they're just sort of investigating right now and they just don't know. And the other reason is they want to use the grand jury to its full investigative potential. A grand jury, as it was traditionally constituted, for hundreds of years, was a body of citizens that's allowed to investigate crime by compelling people to give them information, cooperate, testify, and provide documentation. So you really do need the extra time to get that done. So I think that's why they took that step, and it's not unusual in a complex fraud or corruption case.
And it is important to also point out that the former president has denied any wrongdoing. Of course, this seems to be a highly complex investigation, as you just described it. What do you think prosecutors are looking at in presenting to the grand jury at this point?
So they're looking at what could be constituted as kind of classic white-collar crime. You make one representation for one purpose and a different representation for a different purpose. On a small scale, it might be like a family that seeks financial aid and wants to show that they have very little income, and then they seek a loan and they want to show they have a lot of income. You put those two together and you know that somebody's lying about something. On a much broader scale, as you mentioned in the introduction, Lindsay, it's about what did you tell the tax authorities, what did you tell the lenders, what did you tell insurance underwriters? And so they're going to have to find, presumably there is a discrepancy or else there wouldn't be a reason to do this investigation. So it's very, very complex. These are tough investigations.
As much as it is complex, so I imagine that there would be some kind of clear cut if you have this paper trail that he either did it or he didn't, right? And there would be proof in the paperwork.
Yeah, it doesn't always work that way, particularly in areas of intent. You have to prove what's in someone's mind based on something else, usually a document, a conversation, sometimes a recording. So yeah, documents might tell you what's in someone's mind, but more likely they'll just tell you what the transaction is. And Trump himself famously doesn't use email. So that's a traditional way to sort of show what's in someone's mind at particular points in time. So this is going to be painstaking. It's going to be about conversations, the communications between the Trump Organization and the accountants at Mazars will be very important. The work papers that the accountants at Mazars kept will be very important. So this is going to be there's just a lot of different places that you look for evidence of knowledge and intent, which are crucial in white-collar cases, and separate a simple transaction, perhaps a civil wrong, from the much, much more serious criminal problem.
And this investigation appears to have begun with claims by Trump's former attorney and fixer Michael Cohen, someone who turned on Trump after pleading guilty to other crimes. So is Cohen a reliable source or witness, given that he has some skin in the game here?
Well, it's hard to tell is the short answer. But, you know, Michael Cohen obviously has issues. But the thing to understand at this stage is it's not clear that they're even going to use him as a witness. They may just be using him as a source of information. You know, Michael Cohen talks a lot on his podcast, on interviews, about what he knows about Trump, a little bit less now that he's obviously been asked not to talk publicly about the details of the investigation. But he's very bullish on the case, so he obviously knows what is out there. So the short answer is we don't know. I'm sure that Trump and Weisselberg's defense lawyers are chomping at the bit to have Michael Cohen be the witness, the star witness for the DA. And I think the DA's people are a lot smarter than to do anything that would make it seem like Michael Cohen is the star witness. I will say, by the way, that I don't think it's impossible to put Michael Cohen on the witness stand and have him be believed by the jury. You know, I put on some pretty bad people who have lied before. And Michael Cohen, you know, he did some things, but he wasn't somebody who lived a life of crime. He was somebody who, you know, did some things that he regrets, and he certainly lied, and that's fair game for cross-examination. But it doesn't mean he's lying now.
As a former top official in the DA office that's leading this case, how do you respond to Trump's claim that this is nothing more than a witch hunt by a partisan Democratic prosecutor?
Well, it's complete nonsense. I mean, Cy Vance is as professional a prosecutor as I've ever known, and among people who have to get elected by definition, so he's a politician, he's the least politician that many people have ever met. I mean, Cy Vance is a lawyer first and a politician second. So that said, Trump is going to say what he's going to say. And that I expect would happen even if Trump himself is not charged. You know, whoever is charged in this case will face a public relations onslaught. But Cy Vance has kept his head down. He's done the legal work here. He's gone all the way to the Supreme Court.
The least politician. And lastly, knowing this DA's office and how it operates, what's your best guess on the timing of this investigation, given where they are now?
Well, I think that we have two great clues. One is that it's a 6-month grand jury. So that, you know, doesn't mean that it has to happen within 6 months. It can still be extended, but usually you want to keep the decisions within the initial period, because otherwise the grand jurors get upset that they have to stay longer than they thought they were going to have to. But the second is that this is the last year of Cy Vance's 4-year term and of 12 years in office. He's not running for re-election. There will be a new district attorney as of January 1st of next year. So you can bet that he wants to have this decision made by him before he leaves office. So, you know, 6 months from now is around November. You know, that makes sense. It could be sooner. Very complex, but that seems like a good educated guess.
Dan Alonso, we thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Still ahead here on Prime, the so-called doomsday couple charged with murdering 2 children. They now face new allegations. The major streaming deal, Amazon, now set to own part of the James Bond franchise. How they may shake up the industry. We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. Chadwick Boseman posthumously congratulating the grads of the new school that Howard University just named after him.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough. You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not replace us!
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads. It's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
24 hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to a groundbreaking corporate merger that joins big tech with entertainment and the old with the new. Today, Amazon said it will acquire legendary film studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, known as MGM. And we take a look by the numbers. $8.45 billion, that's the price tag for MGM, which has a vast catalog of more than 4,000 films, including Basic Instinct, Rocky, Silence of the Lambs, Creed, and Legally Blonde, just to name a few. Also part of the deal, 007. That's, of course, James Bond, and we just had to use that number. On the small screen, MGM has some 17,000 TV shows, including Fargo and The Handmaid's Tale. Collectively, those movies and shows have won more than 180 Academy Awards and 100 Emmys. Formed in 1924, MGM and that iconic roaring line are quintessential old Hollywood. And now it will be swallowed up by tech giant Amazon, which expects to radically bolster its Prime Video streaming service, a platform that competes with streamers like Netflix and our parent company, Disney. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The new charges handed down after this weekend's horrific and deadly cable car accident in Italy, what prosecutors say happened before the incident. And this Asian American Heritage Month, our important conversation with a children's book author about acceptance. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Give me a big hug, Griffin.
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA 3, what you need to know. GMA 3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
In California, the suspected gunman in today's mass shooting was an employee at the rail yard in San Jose. Authorities say he killed 8 people at the Valley Transit Authority facility.
His name is Samuel Cassidy, and he is associated with the Transit Authority there in San Jose. There was a fire at his residence that appears to have been intentionally set. The bomb squad may have gotten a hit on a vehicle that belongs to the suspect. So right now, investigators are no doubt going through his background to see what they can learn about him.
The suspect died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Day 6 in the murder trial of the death of 20-year-old Molly Tibbetts. The college student disappeared in 2018 while jogging near her home in Brooklyn, Iowa. Today, Christian Bahena Rivera testified with a bombshell claim that he was kidnapped by 2 men who forced him to drive them to a road where they killed Tibbetts and put her body in the trunk of his car. Rivera said he then hid her body in a cornfield and lied about it all, fearing that something would happen to his daughter and ex-girlfriend. An attorney for the defendants say police may have forced a false confession.
You want the truth, not someone just to say what you want them to say. Is that right?
We are looking for the truth.
The leader of Belarus speaking out for the first time, defending the diverting of a Ryanair passenger plane.
There were no apologies from Belarus's leader Alexander Lukashenko as he spoke publicly for the first time about the hijacking. In a speech to officials, he instead accused Western countries of staging the incident. He made a series of wild claims, including that the bomb threat that Belarus used to divert the Ryanair flight had come from Switzerland.
From where did it come from? Where did you find the information about it from?
Airport security staff informed they received email.
The mother of the blogger seized by Belarus, Roman Pratasevich, has told ABC News she believes he's been tortured. Natalia Pratasevich is making pleas to the international community to save him.
Arrest in Italy after a weekend cable car crash that left 14 people dead and 1 child fighting for his life.
3 people in northern Italy are under arrest in connection with the cable car crash that killed 14 people on Sunday. Italian police say at least 1 person questioned overnight admitted to what happened. The clamp had been intentionally placed on the brake as a patchwork repair to stop it from engaging because it was braking spontaneously and interrupting the movement of the cable cars. The cable snapped on Sunday, causing a car with 15 people on board to plummet down the slope until it hit trees. The sole survivor, a 5-year-old Israeli boy, remains in critical condition.
Lawmakers are mourning the loss of former Senator John Warner.
Former Virginia Senator John Warner was 94 years old. He died from heart failure at home with his wife and daughter by his side. The World War II and Korean War veteran was known as a moderate Republican who championed independent thinking that benefits country over partisan allegiance. The already popular senator made an even bigger splash when he married Hollywood darling Elizabeth Taylor. The two divorced after 6 years. Warner served 5 terms in the U.S. Senate before his retirement.
At my request, the flags around the Senate side of the U.S. Capitol will be lowered to half staff in his honor.
President Biden, who worked across the aisle and alongside Warner as a senator, called it, quote, a privilege to serve with Warner.
Welcome back. And now we bring you an update on the case against Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell. The couple was arrested in 2020 for the murder of Vallow's 2 children. Vallow's family blames her involvement in a, quote, doomsday cult. Marcus Moore has been following this story for us and has the very latest.
Tonight, Idaho mother Lori Vallow and husband Chad Daybell appearing separately before a judge, facing first-degree murder charges in the deaths of her two children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Daybell also facing another murder charge in the mysterious 2019 death of his first wife.
The maximum penalties of all of those counts carry up to, they could all run consecutively, one after the other, or they could run concurrently. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Vallow gained national attention in December of 2019 after family reported 17-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ missing and possibly in danger. The news coming as it was revealed Vallow had married Daybell after joining his doomsday religious group. In court documents, a friend claimed that around the time the children were last seen, Vallow had told her JJ was a zombie, quote, considered a dark spirit, and that a person's true spirit was stuck until the host body is physically killed. In February of 2020, I asked Daybell about Tylee and JJ's whereabouts.
Are the kids okay?
He later told ABC News, quote, the kids are safe. After a months-long search, investigators found the children's remains that summer on his property.
Marcus Moore joins us now. Marcus, is anything known about how the children died?
Lindsay, not at this point. We don't know a cause of death, but we do know from authorities that the remains that were found in a shallow grave on that property, and investigators said that it appeared that JJ was wrapped in plastic and that the other remains that were found appeared to have been burned. So just a tragic case. And Lindsay, at this point, again, investigators, though, still have not said or ruled on a cause of death.
Marcus Moore, our thanks to you for that. And next, we take a closer look at the threat from ransomware, the type of cyber attack that hit Colonial Pipeline this month, causing those gas shortages up and down the East Coast. Experts say that these attacks are becoming more frequent and more lucrative for criminals, with companies losing hundreds of billions of dollars from these attacks in just the past few years. ABC's Alex Prochet explains.
Certainly you've seen the headlines.
We begin tonight with the growing concern across this country after that massive cyber attack.
The effects of the Russia-based ransomware attack are being felt up and down the East Coast.
We are learning the company paid the hackers millions in ransom.
Colonial Pipeline, the victim of a devastating ransomware attack. Its effects passed down to the consumer through gas shortages and panic buying. But how did we get here? First, you have to understand what ransomware is. Sean Henry is the chief security officer at CrowdStrike. He also spent more than 2 decades working at the FBI.
Ransomware is the deployment of malware, malicious software, into a corporate environment that encrypts all of the data.
Hackers will then only decrypt that data if the original owner pays up, often through cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin.
It's a digital ransom.
It's exactly what it is. It's not very different from kidnappings and extortions.
It's also encouraged these hackers to focus on critical infrastructure. Think healthcare. Dr. Mark Memo's urology practice in Northeast Ohio got hit in 2019. He says the hackers wanted $24,000 in Bitcoin.
We said we would be willing to, pay them if they could prove that they could unencrypt the data.
His IT firm paid the ransom, but Memo estimates the ordeal still cost his practice about $150,000 in back bills, lost business, and rebuilding security. It also impacted his patients.
And we had patients that were in the middle of cancer treatments that we had to delay because we couldn't verify the data, we couldn't verify the medications they needed.
According to the National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, there are 3 common ways these ransomware attacks happen. Phishing campaigns like emails with malware and a suspicious link. Remote desktop protocol vulnerabilities, where hackers gain access to a computer or network over the internet. And software vulnerabilities, where hackers use security weaknesses in widely used software to access people's data. Many of these attacks come from organized crime groups that operate out of Russia, as well as North Korea, China, and Iran.
The U.S. government can only use law enforcement actions in a foreign country with the collaboration of the host government.
Ransomware attacks first got on the radar of many in 2017. The WannaCry worm is estimated to have infected more than 200,000 people around the world, victims often paying between $300 and $600 in Bitcoin to unlock their data. But since then, these attacks have increased and evolved. A report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies in McAfee estimated the worldwide cost of cybercrime at almost $1 trillion between 2018 and 2020.
Unfortunately, those payments encourage these organized crime groups to continue.
The FBI warns against paying these ransoms, and just this fall, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control tried to crack down on them too, especially ransoms to sanctioned hackers. It issued an advisory to companies that engage with ransomware attack victims of the potential sanctions they could face for facilitating ransomware payouts.
They'd rather deal with the government saying they did something wrong than deal with an organized crime group who has just ended the existence of their company.
Cities have also fallen victim, including New Orleans. It got hit with a ransomware attack in December of 2019. A city employee opened the wrong email at work. A phishing attack.
It's devastating.
Kimberly LeGroux is the city's chief information officer. The city opted to rebuild its system instead of pay up. LeGroux says New Orleans spent about $1.5 million recovering that data from old hard copy records and another $5.2 million rehabbing their digital infrastructure.
This is almost like hurricane. You get prepared because you see the bad weather coming.
Experts say updating computer security infrastructure is critical. Many organizations that operate on legacy technologies are vulnerable. Some elected officials have advocated legislation requiring companies to share information with the government when an attack happens. But ultimately, experts say companies will have to reevaluate how they operate.
Companies have relied on the government to stop these attacks. Companies are responsible for protecting themselves against nation states, against organized crime groups, which is very different from what we see in the physical world.
Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
Our thanks to Alex. The NFL's all-time leading scorer, Adam Vinatieri, is retiring after a remarkable 24 seasons in the league. The 48-year-old played on the Indianapolis Colts and New England Patriots. In fact, 2 of Tom Brady's Super Bowl wins are a direct result of Vinatieri's game-winning kicks. He made 29 in all in his career. No kicker has more Super Bowl rings. And the results of that first Ohio vaccine lottery are in tonight. The first big winner, a woman from near Cincinnati, won $1 million, and Team Joseph Costello from near Dayton won a full-ride 4-year scholarship to any school, any state school in Ohio. Drawings will take place each of the next 4 weeks. And when we come back, why representation matters, even at such an early age. My conversation with an author who writes about the Vietnamese experience in her new children's book.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
reality is our country can collapse from within. You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
We turn our focus now to amplifying Asian American voices. For many Asian Americans in our communities, this month of May is a time to reflect on their culture while teaching others about their rich heritage. And joining us now is Moon T. Van, author of the new children's book, Wishes, a story about a Vietnamese little girl's journey across rocky seas, fighting political imprisonment in hopes for a better home for her and her family. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your book, Wishes. It's a beautiful book, first off. There are only 75 words in total, and yet the story is really packed with this intense emotion. Tell us a little bit about the creative process behind it.
Well, Wishes is based on my family's story, and I really have to thank Victor Nai for bringing this story to life with her incredible art. When I was born, my family was already in hiding. My dad was wanted by the new Vietnamese government for having fought against them in the war that had ended. And soon after I arrived, we quietly made our way back to our village on the Central Coast. And in the middle of the night, we escaped using my grandfather's fishing boat. We were able to pack only what we could carry, and our journey was incredibly hard and dangerous, and we almost perished in a terrible storm. But fortunately, we didn't, which wasn't the case for all of my relatives. Eventually, we made our way to Hong Kong, where we stayed in a refugee camp for a while before we found a new home in the United States.
And your book is certainly a story of resilience, belonging, and hope. How do you explain your refugee journey of escaping war and government persecution to children?
Well, I try to, with the words, I try to make it as approachable as possible. And I think collectively, with Victor and the entire team, we try to create a gentle, accessible story that anyone, whether they're 2 years old or 92, can read it and gather something from it. And I wanted to try to, plant a seed of kindness in the reader's heart while they're still young. And I hope that we did that.
You also mentioned the carry-on bag that you took the day that you had to up and leave your home. You write, the bag wished it was deeper. What's one item that you took with you and one item that you had to leave behind because your bag simply wasn't deep enough?
Well, everything that we packed was essential. We took, we packed food, we packed water, gasoline, and jewelry. And the jewelry we used to actually barter for more gas and more food later on. I think the one thing that I wish we could have packed, but it just wasn't possible, was just more memories of my grandparents. They were the only 2 surviving grandparents, and when I got on that boat, I left them behind, and my family never saw them again. So I never got to know what it was like to be a grandchild with my grandparents, and I wish I could have.
Of course. And lastly, according to UNICEF, there was a total of 17 million children around the world who were refugees or asylum seekers. What would you like people to know about child refugees as someone who went through it firsthand?
I think the story in Wishes is told again and again every day around the world. The children and the folks who are migrating and who are refugees are people just like you and me. And they have homes, they have teachers and classes that they attend, they have jobs, they have people whom they love deeply. And when they have to pack up everything that they have and leave their home, it is already so hard and heartbreaking that I think the least that we can do is to open our hearts and to do what we can when we can. I hope Wishes will remind us of our common humanity and that we will work together to try to make the world safer and kinder and better for everyone.
A noble mission. They are Moon T. Van. We thank you so much for your time. Wishes is available now, and you can find it wherever books are sold. And a notable passing tonight, beloved children's book author and illustrator Eric Carle has passed away at 91 years old. The prolific writer and artist contributed to some 70 books in his 6-decade career, illustrating classics such as Brown Bear, What Do You See? And of course, his best-known work, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which has been translated into more than 70 languages since it was first published back in 1969. Before we go tonight, our image of the day, and it is a powerful one. Pope Francis greeting a Polish survivor of Auschwitz during a public audience at the Vatican. She showed him the number tattooed on her arm. He leans over and he kisses it. She said that no words were exchanged, but that, quote, we understood each other with a glance. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and have a great night.
You can be a bother